Hello and welcome to the Time To Talk Titanic podcast. I said there again, but we're going to roll with it. I'm joined today with our beautiful co-host Arron and the other beautiful co-host Louie. It's just the two of us today. How do you feel about that, Arron?
I feel really nostalgic, actually. It's like full circle. It's nice.
Yeah. As long as you
for anyone wondering, I was just going to say quickly, it's not because everyone else jumped ship. You'll have noticed that, well, there's like a revolving rotor of co-hosts, and it just so happens
they've gone out the door and not come back.
They haven't, and do you know what? That's fine. But yeah, it's just us, and I actually feel good about it. It's cool. Yeah, it's nice.
Good. I'm not going to lie. I spent the last 30 seconds. I went to touch my phone and accidentally turned my screen off. So while you were talking, that I was fiddling with my screen, going, "Turn back on." But as Arron said, it's just the two of us today, and he's given me the reins of an intro, which this is the second time we've recorded it because I just kept saying words wrong. So, Arron, what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about unanswered questions regarding the sinking of Titanic and everything kind of surrounding it. So it could be things leading up to the sinking. It could be things kind of after the sinking, the aftermath. And
I've got an arsenal of questions. What way did the funnel fall? How many pieces did the ship break into? Did it break under the water? Is it possible that the ship broke into a V shape? No. But the other questions we will try our best to answer using our expert knowledge in the events of the tragedy of the RMS Titanic.
Yeah, because it might seem like an obvious kind of episode topic, and it kind of is, because sometimes you want an episode topic where you don't need to beforehand do a ton of research. We've all been busy this summer.
I've done none.
Well, it's kind of stuff that it kind of is just the essence of the story of Titanic. The whole thing is kind of unanswered, and that's kind of what keeps us coming back. If we knew every single little minute detail about it, there probably wouldn't be this constant resurgent interest in the story. So there will be nothing groundbreaking that I can think of potentially that will come out in this episode. However, I was quite caught off guard like 2 days ago or less than, because something that I had never really considered before suddenly became one of my unanswered questions.
Ooh, what's that?
So we can start with it if you want. I posted it in the group chat. Just dive right in. I shall, absolutely.
Just dive right in. Let's go for it.
So something that I had never heard of or considered, but has now been in my head ever since. It's in terms of the positioning of the wreck in relation to where the ship actually sank. So there's someone on one of the Facebook groups. He's one of the moderators of, I think it's the RMS Titanic Facebook group. Could be wrong. So that was either a shameless plug for the right page or a shameless plug for the wrong page. Apologies. But this guy's name is Justin Fitz, and he does a lot of research about the breakup, and he posts a lot of very kind of detailed, kind of annotated images and posts onto this page. And he's been researching the breakup, and obviously, like any good Facebook group, whenever he posts these things, he gets shouted down by people who say, who are you to do this research? And this is all open and closed,
I mean, because let's face it, the only research you're allowed to do is what's been done by Titanic, Honor and Glory or James Cameron. Apart from that, your opinion doesn't matter.
Exactly. You're only allowed to kind of sing from the hymn sheet of, everyone else. You're not allowed to deviate. And I've been aware of Justin's posts for a while, but it was one recently that really kind of caught my interest. So he'd overlaid an aerial view of the ship over the wreck site, and he'd positioned the ship where it sank in relation to where the wreck currently is.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense. So the ship sank facing northwest,
yeah.
Kind of like this. So that's the bow, that's the stern. But interestingly, the bow underwater is like facing that way. And the stern,
okay.
although it's facing, the stern's not facing the right direction, the stern's like here. So the ship sank like that, or like that, but the bow is facing here. So whenever we hear about the breakup and the bow's descent to the ocean floor, we think of it almost like a bullet, like it's just going the trajectory that it came out the barrel of the gun. It's going straight. So what would cause it to then go straight down and then curve, and it just doesn't make sense. And I have never ever heard it kind of mentioned before that actually the positioning of the bow is not a straight line up to where it sank. And
it's not, is it? But I'm trying to think, is it on a sea of glass where they mention that the ship, as it's split, it's sort of it's not turning, it's sort of like floating and like sort of doing this sort of movement as it goes down. I don't think it just split and went straight down like that. I think it was a split sort of almost to the side a little bit and then sort of like a little turning on its point.
Yeah, so there were quite a few survivor testimonies. I forget who it was said it, but there was one person who said that the stern, and I can't remember if they saw it break. I don't think they did. I think they just kind of saw it rise up and sink. But they said it was as if the stern was turning away from them. Out of shame. So there were accounts of the ship turning. It's not something you see in the Cameron film that I can think. It just kind of rises straight up and it's very on end.
Yeah. In the Cameron film, it's very choreographed. It's very sort of robotic in a way. It splits and then it goes up in a perfect sort of no sort of movement, and then it's just like that, like a solid structure. And then when it goes down, it even goes down as like a solid structure. Because obviously they were working with the limitations of working on a set like that where things do move in that way. So it does seem very robotic and unnatural in the Cameron film. I don't think that was a thing that they decided, okay, it goes down like this and then it robotically goes down. That's just, the limitations that they had with the set and the rigs that they used.
But there was definitely this kind of reported turning. And it kind of makes sense if you think, so the ship had a list to port anyway. So I actually commented on Justin's post and was kind of throwing in my own, armchair kind of historian knowledge or opinion. And just saying that, so with this port list, when the ship started to break, there's more of the ship in the water on the port side than there is on the starboard side. So more ocean water is going to start rushing into the port crack of the hull than the starboard side, which means during the breakup, the ship's probably going to take on more of a port list, or even if it doesn't take on more of a port list, as it starts to go vertical, it's going to be much more off balance because there's now more water in the port side. Which I think probably is going to lead to this kind of natural, organic turning of weight of the center of gravity, but it still doesn't explain why the bow has gone completely off course. But Justin, essentially what he's theorizing is that the breakup actually happened below the surface. It did break up kind of above the surface, but like not fully and not that much, which could explain why it wasn't that noticed. So like in the Cameron film, it's like the tip of it just falls off and it's very, very prominent. That's now been revised and it was slightly below the surface, and also it was between the second
23 and 25 degree list, I think is what they're saying now. I think it shows it really well, and as much hate as I have for this, it does show it quite well in the 2012 miniseries, with that subtle split. That's a much lower angle. And if I'm not mistaken, they do also show the ship as it's going up sort of twisting as well and going down like that rather than just going straight down. I think they do show it going down like that, sort of turning. But I don't... with the amount of testimony that there was saying that the ship did split in half, I just don't think it could have happened underwater.
No. And that's kind of, I want to speak to Justin because I don't know how far underwater he's saying it broke apart. He's definitely not saying it sank intact, because that would probably justify people calling him out a bit on Facebook and being like, it didn't sink intact on the surface. Yeah. But I think he's saying it more or less kind of did. Like, I think he's saying it broke kind of from the boat deck down, but not much. And so it didn't even settle back that much, because to be fair, it wasn't actually, the incline wasn't as steep as shown in a lot of films. So I think he's saying it actually separated nearer the ocean surface, like the bottom.
So is he saying that, expert analysis here, the ocean, as every child does when they're younger and they're playing with their model and go, oh, look at that. Is he saying that the ship sort of, it's in this sort of position and then almost splits from here? And then, so the split happens while that bit's submerged. You don't actually see it split. You just sort of see a resting and then go up, rather than seeing an actual split happen and the drop. You're seeing just sort of like a subtle dip and then up.
But then as well, I don't even know if he's saying if it was top down or bottom up.
Right.
Because he's posted a lot. I kind of want him to just collate it all in one place, like a Google document or something. To read through it. Because again, this guy's just like you and I. He's just like a casual...
perfect place would be the Time to Talk Titanic podcast.
It would be.
Justin.
I might see if he's willing to come on.
Justin.
I mean, he's clearly got a lot to say, so I'm sure he would. But another interesting thing he pointed out, and it's something I've never noticed. So the bow and the stern, the aerial kind of photographs that we've got of them, there's obviously the debris field. And it's large. It does cover a vast area. But actually, another good point he brings up, and other people have brought this up as well, is that it doesn't actually cover that large of an area for a ship that apparently broke apart at the surface, and all the things dropping down would have fanned out.
Yeah.
And people have kind of done equations and stuff and said that actually it more seems like the bottom of the ship separated much closer to the ocean floor than all the kind of digital renderings show of the ship underwater, where the stern's completely on its own, spinning around doing its thing. And
so what they're thinking is that the ship split, pulls it down, sort of like the banana peel theory, pulls it down and then stays connected slightly.
Quite a while.
And then eventually breaks off and then goes. I think that could make sense. However, if you look at the stern wreck, that has been absolutely destroyed, which I feel like if it had a part of the Titanic connecting it, that would have been protecting it from this jet of water that has torn it apart from the inside. I wish I hadn't done that. That has torn it apart from the inside and sort of shredded it, which we see from the wreck.
That's the thing, because in my head I was like, okay, the stern's still being attached and having so many reactions to being filled with water. There's a lot of implosion going on. It's more erratic. So if you think the bow would be pretty solid because it's full of water, so it wants to go this way, it wants to go straight, but the stern is fairly light in comparison. I think somewhere I read that the weight of the bow section at the time that it sank was nearly the weight of like the entire ship.
Yeah, the entire ship.
Before it was full of water. It was that heavy, whereas the stern in comparison weighed almost nothing. So it's kind of wriggling around and writhing and exploding. And the bow, whilst it's trying to do this, is being affected by that. Because although it's light, it still has a reaction. So that would explain why it's been taken off course, on top of the port list, on top of there being more water going into the crack because of the port list, that rotation that we see. As well, the bow debris, he's pointed out, I need to find these illustrations and I'll put them on Instagram for people to see, because it is interesting. It almost seems like the bow has zigzagged before it's hit its final resting spot, because there's trails of debris and he's drawn like a red line beside them. And it literally, from like the open destroyed end of the bow backwards, there is literally this like zigzag trail of debris, which makes it almost seem like the bow, when it got to the bottom, it didn't just like dig in, it almost like snaked. Maybe not on the ground, potentially
sort of like a plane crash landing. It skids for a bit rather than just going flat.
Or even before it hit the bottom, it was maybe like doing weird movements. It wasn't just all of the evidence that he's kind of pointing out. I just find it really interesting because it completely flies in the face of this very straight, nosedive and crash and you're done. It implies that there's a lot more going on below the surface. And, I think it took 10 minutes for the ship to actually hit the bottom. And a lot can happen in those 10 minutes. So even if the stern might have only been attached for 3, and then so 7 minutes. 7 minutes probably would have been enough for the stern to be completely pulverized, because, we don't know. There's nothing really to compare. We've never sank a ship of Titanic size to see what it looks like. If I was a billionaire, I would like get 5 like replica Titanics built and sink them all in like slightly different ways, just to see different.
You need a few more billion.
yeah, I'd need like way more. But that would be like my plaything. I wouldn't want like a jet. I wouldn't want an island or a mansion. I would just want like multiple Titanics built to sink them in different ways and see what one's the most accurate.
Have one to keep as well. Have one to float.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Tourist attraction.
No, just be us, like the 10 of us, just like chilling on it. But I just find it really interesting that just this guy, he isn't a paid historian. He's not being paid to do this. He's being ridiculed for doing it, actually, which I think again it's because it goes against the accepted narrative.
I mean, well, we've heard it before, we've spoken about it briefly on the podcast, where there was, I can't remember her name, the survivor who was at a conference and said, I saw the ship split, and they were like, get out, and they're like, they stopped her, but this was someone that was actually there. People are very quick to sort of go, well, actually, this is the information we've got, this is correct, and sling your hook.
Yeah, exactly. And if people can do that to a Titanic survivor, then what chance have we got? But that was kind of my new unanswered question, something I never thought about, because it just was like, we're done with that. We know how the Titanic hit the bottom, but actually looking at the physical evidence, do we? And something just to kind of tie into that, is to kind of finish my point, is at crime scenes, and you'll hear the debris field referred to as a crime scene a lot of the time, or even the ocean surface in the kind of days afterwards, kind of showing, what happened here, how can we piece this all together to figure out, right, this is how they were murdered, because the blood splatter, the boilers are here, the coal is here, so it kind of shows that it fell from this height, all that kind of stuff. But even at real crime scenes with blood and stuff, they get it wrong. Someone will be jailed, and they'll be in jail for 20 years, and then someone else will take their case, it'll go to court, and they'll be found innocent, because actually the blood splatter didn't imply this movement, it implied another movement. And so a jury's like, well, actually it's been presented wrong, so the case gets thrown out. And so real cases in courts can be wrong. So
and that's why I'm against the death penalty.
Exactly. A little bit of a social me too. But so if we can be wrong about things such as fucking murder, of course we can be wrong about how a ship sank underwater in the dark 110 years ago. Like, of course we can. So people who think we can't be wrong about it need to like touch grass, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Those are my thoughts.
So there we go. Unanswerable or unanswered question number 1. Why is the bow facing a different way than it sank? There we go. That would have been a really... Can you imagine if that's how we did it, the episode? Why is the bow not in the way it sunk? Okay, next question.
I might make that the new thumbnail. Just like big question mark, like total like BuzzFeed clickbaity thumbnail.
But if you got it like that, and I'll go. You've got a thumbnail sorted.
Love it.
Right, so I think another one that you said you had someone come into, which was going to be one of mine. I was sort of going to quickly bat it off, to be honest, which was the unanswered question of, was the Titanic and the Olympic split? I mean, I think we both have the same opinion on this.
Yeah, they were. Next question. Who was the Capitan?
Well, let's go back. let's go back there.
Capitan, where should I go, please? Steve Hall, come on. No, they were not.
They were not. Yeah, okay. I was waiting.
Don't cancel us. They were not.
I was having a midlife crisis. I was having a crisis, I was having some sort of crisis there. I was like, hang on, have I been talking to this guy the whole time and he thinks I was switched?
It's like Louie finally just found out that I'm not only a Trump supporter, but I'm like an anti-vaxxer. It's like, all this time, I thought I could trust you.
we are getting into dangerous territory. So a question that I received I think we're skipping over that Olympic-Titanic. We've spoken about it before, and
yeah,
I think there's so many articles out there as well that just poo-poo it.
Basically, to summarize, they weren't because they didn't get any money from it, and they would never have got any money from it. Lloyd's of London had to pay out, at the time it was like 5 million, which, adjusting for inflation, God only knows how much that is nowadays.
Especially today's inflation.
Yeah, so they lost
Rishi.
a shit ton. Like,
yeah.
No, like, no. Absolutely not.
So one that came in from one of my Instagram followers that we've deciphered, Mr. Reese Rose has asked he's asked about another ship that was seen on the port side of the Titanic. So before the episode, we have a brief look at this. And there is believed to be a ship off the port side, closer than the Californian was, called the Samson. Now, the Samson was a seal hunting vessel. However, the place they were in territorial waters, and seal hunting was banned. And we had a little bit of testimony from one of the crew members there who said they had seen what they thought were 2 stars. And they got someone to climb the mast. They saw, and it looked like it was actually 2 solid lights. And then they saw a rocket. But they didn't take much notice. And one of the theories is that they were a seal hunting vessel. They were illegally seal hunting in territorial waters, so they just didn't want to get involved because they would have gotten in a lot of trouble. You know, we saved the people on the Titanic. You were hunting seals.
What about the seals?
Yeah, exactly. I'm with Peter. So yeah, that was we sort of had a little look at that beforehand, and I do think it's quite interesting. You know, there were some survivor testimonies that said that they saw another ship off the port side, and this ship, the Samson, has got a crew member that's given testimony to say that they saw 2 lights and a rocket off of their, you know, I think off their starboard side, because I think they were facing the same similar direction. So it's very possible that they could have been there. It's possible that it could have been them, but I guess that's why it's an unanswered question. There's no solid evidence to say that this ship was there. Nothing that I could see from my 5 minutes of research anyway.
Even when it comes to the Californian, it's funny how certain people are, because when I first heard about it, I was really fascinated, because I was saying to Louie, again, during our kind of 5 minutes of pre-recording research, when I first kind of heard that Titanic wasn't completely alone and isolated, there's actually a line from the script of James Cameron's film that always stood out to me, and I'm pretty sure I used it in a fan fiction because it was just so good. I can't remember exactly what scene it is. I think it might be when they're in the water. But James Cameron writes, "The feeling of abandonment and isolation is overwhelming." because you just imagine being in this black, vast nothingness.
Yeah.
But actually...
There's even that shot, isn't there? They use a shot quite a few times where the Titanic's about that big on screen, and the rest of the screen is just blackness and darkness.
It might have actually been with when it sends the flare up and then it cuts and it's like this size. I think it might have been that. But and it's like, you know, abandonment and isolation. But then you think the real passengers on the ship were kind of running around and saying like, there's a ship. Like they were seeing lights, and some of them might have just been hoping it was a ship. But like Boxall gave an interview in the 60s to BBC saying, and again, don't believe it. I think it's one of those things of like false memory.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he was lying. You'd have nothing to gain from lying. But he said that the ship that they were looking at was so close that he could make out people walking on her decks.
Yeah.
And like individual portholes. And it's like, even with binoculars, I very much doubt it. And, you know, it's, yeah.
Yeah. But, especially with the cold water mirage that we know today as well. I think that you know, you touched on as well that a lot of passengers would have seen these stars on the cold water horizon that sort of elongates it and makes you think, oh, there's a mast there, which you touched on in our 5 minutes of research.
Because when you think with
just
a heat mirage, you know, a car driving over a hill, for a long time it just looks like a black square until the car's fully over the road and then you see it's a car. But until then, it's just a stretched black mass. But it is weird though, because when I first heard about the Californian, I just was like, oh wow, okay, this is a thing. I guess I was just late to the party, I didn't know. But people are still so heated in debate about it, you know, and we're never going to know. It's always going to be an unanswered question. Because even the people on the Californian couldn't have said either way whether that was or was not the Titanic. Because
I mean, the captain's not to this day because he's most likely dead. You know, believes that it was way too small to be the Titanic. Says it was a small steamer that they'd seen. Did they see the Samson? Yeah,
exactly. All these ships might have been looking at all these other ships. You know, we're never going to know. And even if it was Lord, wasn't it? Because it's always, you know, Walter Lord wrote A Night to Remember, but I'm sure it was Captain Lord was on the
Stanley Lord.
Stanley Lord,
on the California,
unless he had this like brilliant like night vision and like binoculars that could see for days, and he saw the nameplate on the bow of Titanic. Unless he saw that and on his dying breath said to his relative, it was the Titanic, dies. Unless that happened and that relative comes out and says it, we don't know. And even if that relative did come out, we could be like, you're just saying that for money, bugger off. Like,
you're just writing a book, aren't you?
Yeah, you're just doing what I mean, I wish I had a Titanic relative. I'd write like 10 books. But we're never going to know. But I find it really just interesting, this idea that the Titanic was not completely abandoned and it was actually,
I mean, I'm surprised you haven't used your analogy yet that you used pre-episode, that it was on I think you said it was on a highway. You know, it was on an ocean highway. It was a shipping route. You know, they had deviated slightly to avoid the ice. Didn't work, did it, mate? But it was still on a shipping lane, a commercial shipping lane that many ships used at that time.
I mean, when there's an app specifically, I don't know the name of it, but you can look at flights and you can track
Flight Radar 24.
There we go.
Got it on my phone.
The amount of planes in the sky at any one time, it's insane. It's jarring, and you can do it with ships as well. And okay, there were no planes in 1912.
Sorry, what? You can use it with ships?
Yeah. My partner's sister's son works on a ship, and she tracks the ship he's on.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I might have to try and find that app. Because you used to be able to live stream cameras from like the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, and all of these different ships. I used to love watching those. I mean, half the times it was like a photo that rendered every 6 seconds, and it was just in the ocean. So it was ocean, 6 seconds, ocean. And I was like, this is what they're seeing right now.
That's hilarious. Years ago, similar to that, like very disjointed it was like this library in America somewhere that was really haunted, apparently. I think it was called Willard Library. And I used to sit when I was like 10 and watch like its webcams on its website and like hope that I saw like some like decapitated ghost or something. Like, I spent many like Friday nights as a child waiting for a ghost. And if one had popped up, I'd have shat myself. So I don't know why I was doing it.
Did you ever see one? Ghosts don't exist. Unanswered question, answered.
Or they were just smart and they knew to only appear during the period where the camera wasn't filming.
Back to square one. Unanswered question. Tick.
Still unanswered.
Yeah. But yeah, so as you were saying, yeah, it was on a sort of a shipping route, a highway, if you will, that was used for most transatlantic lines going to New York.
Yeah.
Or going back.
So, it could... I try not to vilify anyone in the story of Titanic. I mean, I wrote a whole fucking video essay about nuance and about, the shades of grey, in between these black and white caricatures. Like, I'm very much about the nuance and not vilifying people. But I think I'm also a bit on the fence with the whole Californian thing, because I'm pretty sure the ruling was actually that Stanley Lord had shown negligence.
Yeah.
And not going to sea, which I think he did. But again, does it change anything? No. He
also, at the same time, they stopped because of ice. There's the Carpathia stopped because of ice, and then they went through. In fact, they spent the night dodging icebergs because they don't want to sink. I think that would be another unanswered question. What would have happened if the Carpathia hit an iceberg on the way to the Titanic? I think there's a I haven't actually watched the video yet, but I've seen it suggested quite a few times. Is it Ocean Liner Designs on YouTube? He has one titled "What if the Carpathia sank?" And I've been meaning to watch that, but I haven't watched it yet. But yeah, so I don't know what you remember from that video, but I mean, I guess it would.
I remember much, but it's essentially not good.
Yeah.
If the Carpathia sank, it would be all a bit more bad. Like, it's like Titanic, but more bad.
Yeah. But then at the same time, in the morning, the Californian had sort of transmitted to the Carpathia, we've heard what's happened. Is there anything we can do to help? It would have been other ships in the area that had transmitted saying what's happened. And then probably California would have been the ship that saved them.
The Carpathia, if it was sinking and had enough time, you'd have had two sets of rockets going off, but the Carpathia's rockets would have been slightly closer to Californians, I think. I'm assuming, were they coming from that same direction? Because the ice was between Titanic and Californian, and the ice field was also obviously between Carpathia.
So the Titanic was here, the ice field was sort of here across like this, and they're at the tip of the ice field. And I think on this side you had the Mount Temple, which was on the complete opposite side of this ice field. And then you had the Titanic here, Carpathia up here, Californian here. Yeah. So I think they might have had to weave through a little bit of it,
but not much.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not an expert in the Titanic anyway, but my least known parts of it is probably the aftermath of the sinking and the rescue operation that went underway. Because my child morbid brain when I was younger was like, I want to see ships sink. I want to know how ships sink. I want to see ships sink.
Yeah, it's like the rescue. That's like, it's like that's one thing, but like part of what I'm really looking forward to with my drawings and like the book that I'm working on is I want to dedicate the kind of latter, I don't know how much of it, how many pages, but I do want to draw, I want to draw Louie, like one of my French girls. I want to dedicate at least 12 pages to that. I think it'll be nice.
Got to be 12 pages to fit my stomach in.
Jesus. Love yourself. But because I was reading accounts from passengers who were just on the Carpathia, and they were describing what it was like to suddenly spend the rest of the voyage going to not where you were planning to go. And not only that, but you're surrounded by people who are completely traumatized, have lost their husbands or don't know if they've lost their husbands. Like, that just must be so surreal. And, you know, saying that they were having to sleep on chairs and tables in the library, sleep on the floor in the library. You know, that's definitely something I want to draw, because it's something we just don't think about. And you're right, it's because when we think about Titanic, we think about, were there any like living people in the ship when it went under the water, and how long did they live, and did their skulls explode? It's like, well, and it's like, I get it, you know, we've all got that morbid curiosity, and it's like, you know, but
was anyone alive in the Titanic when it was at the bottom of the ocean?
Yes, and they're still alive and they're procreating, and there's actually people just living, existing on, and they're basically like sea monkeys who've evolved to have like gills and fins.
And you know, most of them use the swimming pool every day because I hear it's still filled.
And they've got a new bath because the captain's bathtub fell through the ceiling. So they're like, yay, we've got a new bath.
Oh, we can finally clean. You live in water.
But yeah, so that's a good unanswered question, and it's one of those ones that it will sadly always remain unanswered. But
I think we can say that for most of our questions tonight.
For most, I've got a very quick one before I want to hear what you've got. But and I think it's something that we might both share.
Okay.
The central propeller,
3-bladed.
Why have they not done scans of it to like, even just to like, if any of these professionals that had enough money and access to like sonar imaging could read some of the comment threads on a Facebook group and be like, oh Jesus, we need to put these people out of their misery and like find out once and for all. Do you know what would be hilarious though? If it had broke, like on the way down, all the blades like fell off and it just, there were no blades on it.
What would be better? Like... So you scanned it and there are 5 blades.
Yeah, like they were like, oh, let's give it.
It's like a Lusitania propeller with just blades everywhere.
Yeah, that would be fucking hilarious.
There was no central propeller. It was only had 2 propellers.
Yeah, the middle bit just had like, I don't know, the bust of a mermaid or something. Like, that was it.
But yeah, I think that would. I think the reason it hasn't been done is because there's so much more interest in the bow of the ship. You know, mostly because that's the part that's still not that the stern's not Titanic, but it's the part that's still identifiable as Titanic. If you got a photo of the Titanic up and showed the front and the back, and then shown a picture of the stern wreck and the bow wreck, and say which one of these is Titanic, you'd look at the bow and go, "That's Titanic." Well, what's that? Some scrap metal. You know, it's so. To someone that doesn't know the Titanic, it's so unidentifiable that I feel like there's almost neglect gone towards it.
Yeah. Also,
the amount of money to take that sort of machinery down to the wreck to have a look at this. I think it's why they also haven't done it to the bow section, because they haven't, as far as I'm aware, you know, you've got that where the bow sort of slumped into the ocean floor, and you've got that mound up either side. I don't think they've done any scanning to see that either. I don't, they might have. I'm not, from what I've seen, I don't think they have.
No.
So I think it just comes down to money, and also what's more, I don't know, commercially acceptable. Is that what I'm trying to say? What will sell on newspapers? A photo of the bow is going to sell on a newspaper or a magazine. A photo of the stern, someone's going to say, oh, okay, you got any pictures of the pretty bit, the bit that looks like Titanic?
I think you're spot on when you mention money, because even before selling, investment, because you want a return. So if you go to a bunch of rich people and say, we're going to dive to Titanic and our aims and objectives are this, this, and this, the benefits of which will be this, this, and this. And so all these rich people say, oh, that sounds worthwhile. Okay, we'll give you this much, and we hope to get this much in return, from these things. Crack on, good luck. If you go to a bunch of investors and say, so there's like 40 people on a Facebook group that really can't agree on if it was 4 or 3 blades, they're just going to be like, no. Like Dragon's Den, they'll be like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not.
Also, in the grand scheme of things, it's not important, is it? I mean, it's
not.
For a group of nerdy people like us on the internet talking about Titanic, it's another interesting thing to look at. However, I feel it's down there in the priority list of things that would like to be answered. Things that would like to be answered is, how did the ship split? You know, I can't think of any other ones.
My ones are mostly to do with people. Was Thomas Andrews in the smoking room, or was he at the bridge? A lot of mine are to do with, I think the breakup was one of my main ones, but then seeing Justin's post kind of changed the slant that I was taking.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The propeller, it's, despite the furor with which you'll see people discuss it, it's not that important.
Do you mean fury? Or did you mean to say the furor?
I think there is a word that's like furor. Because I know furor is like an emperor or something, like furor.
Adolf Hitler was the furor.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, please do, because at the moment, the furor of it, I was like...
There's a word that's like fury, but it's also like furor, but I know what you mean. So while you talk about your unanswered question, I'm going to correct myself.
Okay, so one of my unanswered questions is, in popular culture that shows the sinking of the Titanic and with the funnels falling, they're always shown to fall into the port side. However, testimony says that it fell to the starboard side. It washed water into collapsible A, which further flooded it. But then at the same time, it washed collapsible B further away. But then at the same time, collapsible B went from the port side of the ship around to the starboard side of the ship.
Yeah.
Was that because the funnel fell to the port and washed it that way? Or did it fall to the starboard and it washed it further out? There's so many questions there. And then if the testimony says that it fell to the starboard side, why is it always shown falling to the port side? A question my brother always used to ask me when I'd have Titanic on for the 100th time of the day is, watching it, he'd say, why are they showing the funnel fall sideways if the ship's going straight down? Because that's something they did in Cameron's film. They didn't show any sort of tilt. However, they showed the funnel went like that. It's like, what's the ship's going like that? Why is that then going, hello? Why is it going like that and not like that? And I managed to explain it to my brother at the time, but then the testimony says it fell to the starboard. And what we know is, as the ship sank, it started with the ship had a port list because of the coal that was moved over because of the fire. Then the ship gets hit on the starboard side, it starts to sink to starboard. Eventually, as the water levels out, it goes back to port again. So the ship was constantly rocking during the sinking, but as it got up to the boat deck, the left side of the boat deck got flooded first, which is why we say that, they thought they had time to hook up the lifeboat collapsible A on the starboard side. It was because they thought, I was still above water, not knowing that the port side was almost completely under. And then eventually, rather than going down like this, it then leveled, which is why we have that great wave that came over onto the starboard side. So as it came down, it had almost settled straight again, which, it argues too, what way did the funnel fall? Had the ship, it leveled out, did it go further starboard? Did it go further port again? What happened and where did the funnel go?
Where did it go?
Where did it go?
Well,
the
damage on the wreck, on the bridge specifically, a lot of people have said probably came from the funnel. And a lot of the damage is kind of to the, I'm trying to think now, the port side?
So collapsible B side. So the side we're seeing in movies.
I think so. The wing on the wreck. Also, by the way, furor, an outbreak of public anger or excitement.
There we go. We've got the answer. We weren't talking about.
I know my words.
People.
I doubted myself though. But
that was just my plan. Really, was to make you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
So this is a non-glue model. So we've got the funnel here. You're saying that the damage to the ship is on the port side, so that the funnel did fall to the left.
So if you look, you probably won't see it, but right. So the starboard wing, where you have the green light, is almost standing, kind of like this little windowy bit here. where in the film, after the collision, Captain Smith pokes his head out and looks, and there's a green light shining on his face. But then, if you go over to the other side where the red light would be, it's completely flat.
It is completely flat, yeah. However, that davit is still fully standing. Although we are looking at a painting.
Yeah.
So,
what?
I'm sort of thinking, on the wreck, we can see that these davits here for lifeboats 3. I believe it was lifeboat 3 was cranked in. Am I completely butchering my knowledge of the Titanic right now? I think I might be. Because it wasn't where the emergency boats were launched that was cranked back in by Murdoch, was it? I believe it was the one behind there.
I think it was the emergency one that was cranked back in. Pretty sure. Because I think we mentioned it on the Lightoller episode. I'm now looking at photos and I'm like, are these paintings or are these photos? I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at?
You may have to edit this bit out because we're both staring at our phones.
No, this is excellent. This is the joy of being so into something and also so terrified of people. Like, well, to be fair, actually, we've got pretty good viewers and stuff, but you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to be accused of spreading fake news. That's just not a thing. I'm
petrified of the backlash right now.
Yeah, we don't want cancelled.
You guys spent an hour on your phones.
No, this must be a photo. That's a photo.
Well, we do know that there's no full photos of the ship.
Oh no, I'm looking at slightly closer up ones now. But they're also, I'm like, yeah. Anyway,
Oh no, yeah, it is the emergency. Here we can see it's right next to the stairs that led down to. Okay, so it was those ones. So yeah, those would be crushed. That would have been crushed as well. But then another depiction, I'm seeing that the starboard one's up as well. I don't think the starboard one was up.
No.
I think that's just a painting. That's a painting.
So is this something you would like to know? Like, what way did it
fall? It is something I would like to know, yeah, because it's not all. Some testimony says it fell to starboard, some says it fell to port. I haven't got to that point on A Sea of Glass yet. I am reading that book as fast as someone who hates reading can.
Yep,
But I've really been enjoying the book.
It's so good, and I don't read.
I wish there was an audible version. If there was an audible version, I would have listened to that about 12 times already. Is it on Audible? I haven't even looked to see if it's on Audible.
I don't know. I might reach out to Tad and be like, hey, if you ever want someone to like read out your book and put it on Audible, like I'm free. Like, Do you know, interesting, right? So I'm now looking at real photographs of the wreck. And when you look at the starboard side of the wheelhouse kind of officers' quarters area, so the side that doesn't have the davit standing, it's pretty gnarly. It's pretty fucked up. Like there's it almost looks like a huge chunk's been bitten out of it. Whereas the other side's straight.
But then again, this is showing that the davit's cranked up.
Yeah, so the davit's cranked up on the.
That's on the left side. That's on the port side, but the davit was cranked up on the starboard side, not the port side, because it was collapsible A that they'd cranked the davit up, which was on the starboard side. Has that picture been reversed?
I will. Every bow
it's not on Audible.
No, every bow image I'm clicking on has the davit cranked up on the left side.
It was 100% on the starboard side.
You sure?
Yeah. If I type in Titanic wreck davit, the first picture that comes up is of the starboard side showing the davit. And I'm gonna show it to you using my.
This is like background. One of those. Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
This is like one of those like Mandela. Like I'm positive that. Oh, what a background! Do you think maybe that photo has been reversed? Oh wait, no.
Morbid. Too morbid.
Morbid. Speaking of morbid, someone that posted a tattoo, maybe on Reddit, or somebody got the ship sinking and breaking apart on their arm or their leg.
Oh wow.
And people were like, it's great, but why didn't you just get it like sailing? Or like
I'd get part of it here, so I could go ah, ah. That's because I'm a morbid mother. Jeez. Starboard side.
Or so you could create the V-brake.
Starboard side.
Has that is, but if you're just thinking of that one image, maybe that's been flipped for some reason.
There's another image.
Is there? Because every single aerial photo kind of thing that I'm seeing of the bow, the davits on the left side.
This is what happens when there's only two people and we don't have someone else to speak while we're doing this.
Like even this one of like that famous painting by.
This is the.
Oh wait. Oh wait.
This is the starboard side again.
Has one fallen? Because again, I know it's a Ken Marshall painting, but his paintings are pretty accurate. But
there's only one davit, I believe. There's only one davit standing.
His paintings are showing one davit standing, but one davit cranked out.
Well, it was the starboard side that was cranked in because it was Murdoch who was trying to connect collapsible A up, which was on the starboard side.
But in an aerial photo, you'd only see you wouldn't see like the davit leaning out. You'd see like, you wouldn't really see it because if it's upright, it's not going to register. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if it's leaning out, so like you can see a little white dot kind of where the davit would be on the right side, but you can obviously see the davit leaning out on the left side.
Okay, I spelled Ariel wrong, and I'm getting The Little Mermaid.
They're spelled the same, picture.
No. Ariel is Aerial. I was doing it.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah. I've now got part of your world stuck in my head. Look at this stuff, isn't it neat? Don't you think that connection is complete? Don't you think does she not have? Yeah, she's got like a shipwreck. In fact, her little collection's in a shipwreck. She must have like brushed out the skeletons, just been like, these are in my way. Or she uses like a femur bone to like comb her hair.
Isn't the Titanic in Shark Tale?
Yeah.
Where the mob boss is.
There was like it might have been concept art for The Little Mermaid or one of these Disney or Pixar, Finding Nemo or something. And the art people had done concept art and they painted the Titanic, but the two halves, they're resting on top of like these kind of mountains. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up.
Maybe that was in Shark Tale.
Maybe.
Shark Tale, Titanic. We have veered away from unanswered questions.
We have.
It's Shark Tale.
Is that what it's in? I love Shark Tale. Oh yeah.
And it's sort of on like a plinth.
Very cool. But yeah, so davits, funnels, the way they've fallen or haven't fallen. I still think the whole funnel thing's weird. How like, because I always did wonder why did the first funnel fall, but in the James Cameron film especially, you see the top of the second funnel still poking out the water, but the third and fourth ones are just like chilling. But then Honor and Glory come out and they're like, the second funnel also fell and also exploded and there was fire.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. So like
what?
fucking wild. But they didn't just make that up. Like, people did actually say that happened. But James Cameron probably was like, I don't want to get accused of being like Michael Bay, like putting explosions in like Transformers films for like no fucking reason. Like,
it is weird in the Cameron film because you see the second funnel and it's quite submerged at one point, and then suddenly it's just not there, as if it stayed attached and the ship's just gone up. But the reason for the funnel falling, I think, was the pressure of the water on the outside sort of crushing it, because it's sort of just a tube that goes from the top all the way down to the boilers, and it's sort of this, it's obviously not just a hollow cardboard toilet roll inside or something, but the pressure of that water hitting the base of it, the tilt of the sinking, the tilt of the ship sort of crushes it and brings it down. I think one thing that's interesting in the Cameron film is that he depicts it as the falls on the funnel break first, rather than the funnels just crushing and then the falls being torn up because of the funnel going down. It's sort of like, oh, they suddenly started ping, 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 ping.
I always, and I don't know if that was his intention, but I always assumed that it was like the cold water, like the ice cold water had caused something to fail, like caused something to be like, and that was like my very young brain. But
my very young brain had a very different story when I watched that scene. My very young brain saw Cal standing on collapsible A with the oar, holding it like that. And in my head, Cal had smacked the falls, causing the funnel to fall.
Really?
That's how my young brain worked, yeah.
Could you imagine if he was that evil, that he was the reason that
Fabrizio got killed?
Part of what I love about Titanic, but there's a lot of films that are guilty of this. It's like, it's set in a historically true time, but then there's like a fictional main character or multiple fictional, and they just so happen to meet all these real people and experience all these real events, even though they're not real. So it's like in the 4 days that Titanic was like sailing, Rose managed to dine at the table with like Thomas Andrews and Esme on like the first day of sailing or something, managed to get a tour with the captain, which, he did give tours and whatever. And I suppose if there was like Hockley steel in the ship, it would stand to reason that he's like a VIP guest because he contributed to the building of the ship.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. And Ruth says, so she's like, so I know who to speak to if there's a problem or something to that effect. It's just before, because Ruth says like, where's my daughter? And he's like, oh, she'll be here or she'll come or whatever. And Jack's like waiting and Cal just walks right past him.
Correct.
And he says that there's so many tons of Hockley steel in this ship. And Ruth says, oh, so I know who to go to if there's an issue. But yeah.
And then Hockley steel watches his Hockley ship breaking Hockley half.
And it fucking kills Lovejoy. Lol. Oh, David Warner, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, yeah. His second Titanic film, which is incredible.
For those watching who didn't know, he played Lawrence Beasley in SOS Titanic, which was Helen Mirren's first like credited role as a maid.
And we also had, I cannot remember the actor's name, played the Frederick Fleet in A Night to Remember, and then played a very old man looking version of not John Jacob Astor, Colonel Gracie, I think. Did he play Colonel Archibald Gracie?
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, they made Archibald Gracie look really old.
Yeah.
Because he had like black hair at the time and went grey after the sinking. Bernard Fox.
Was that it?
Bernard Fox. Yeah. That was it. Another double whammy.
I thought Bernard, but I was like, am I thinking of Bernard? Because
could be Bernard Fox.
Was Bernard Hill the captain?
Bernard Hill.
So there was two. Bernard's Bernard's a great name. If I ever get a dog or a
Arron, we have gone so off topic.
Not really, because we're talking about Titanic. But if I ever get a dog or a child human, I'm going to call it Bernard, because that's a good name. It's not really,
frozen,
but it's
for me. Is my computer frozen?
I can hear you.
Oh, I don't know what's happening. You've gone like Zanya, you're back. Hello.
You froze there. That was scary. I could hear you, but you were just like, I mean, you looked good. It wasn't like a weird, you know when you freeze,
Thanks.
but you're like in a weird position. Or you're like, you're like mid-blink, so you're like, but yeah. But yeah,
you froze for me as well.
Bernard Fox and David Warner, rip. It's a shame. Yeah, the funnel, that's an interesting one. Did you watch the Titanic illustration designs or whatever, ocean liner designs? He did a video explaining why they fell.
Oh, I haven't watched that either. There's a lot of, I only discovered him recently, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago, where I watched one of his videos about the splitting, the breakup of the Titanic. And I thought, oh my God, that's such a good video. I need to watch more of his. And I just haven't got back to it yet, but I really want to watch more of his videos. Really want to get him on the pod.
He never used to post that much. I've got him on Facebook, I'm pretty sure. But then he's more consistent now, because he did the Carpathia one. And then like a week later, he did the What If Titanic hit head on.
Yeah.
And he doesn't
I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great unanswered question that you've just stumbled us into. What if the Titanic hit head on? So many people, for ages, I believed it as well, because I've just seen so many people say it, and I went with the majority that, you know, it would have buckled, the watertight compartments would have broken, and the ship would have sunk probably about an hour or so. But then I watched his video, and it made so much sense. So much sense. You know, I remember when I was younger, I had a book. It was, I can't remember, it was like an education, like a kid's education book. It's got like a life raft logo with 2 letters. I think it's YK or something. I'm not sure. A really popular book brand. And I was reading that, and it had about a ship that had gone head on into an iceberg, and it had a photo of it. And he uses that in his video, and it's sort of like bent in at the front. And I just skipped past that when I was a kid. And then it's come to this Titanic discussion. They've gone, oh, it would have destroyed the ship, would have killed this many people at the front, then it would have just shot down. But yeah, after watching his video, I'm swayed, very swayed.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the video. And like yourself, I'd kind of bought into this idea that it would have been worse. Or if not worse, different, but it still would have sank.
Yeah.
But yeah, his video convinced me. It was interesting though, and I like this when people will watch a video, and because I watched it not long after being uploaded, and it already had like thousands of comments. You know, people were like ready to like give their 2 cents, and it had like tons of
people
views.
Will read a thumbnail and say, "This is what would have happened." Blah, 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 blah. Now I'm going to watch the video. Never mind.
That is very true. Very true. The Titanic Honor and Glory video that I did 2 years ago now, there was a lot of people commenting that hadn't watched the video, which was really disappointing.
You can always tell.
You can always tell. But there were people who clearly had watched the video and, you know, were like, oh, I can totally see what you were saying with this. But I was encouraged to see that there were people who clearly were fans of his and had watched the video, and they were bringing up points that he said, but then they were saying, but you've not taken this into account. So I finished the video. So basically I went from the ship would have been completely buckled and destroyed and it would have been horrific, to watching his video being like, oh, it would have been fine, to then reading the comments and being like, oh, maybe it wouldn't have been totally fine. Like, but it wasn't, I've not gone back to where I was originally. So I'm now kind of somewhere between his video and a lot of the comments from people.
But then I also totally agree with what he said about Murdoch. Say the ship hit head on, survived, he would have been absolutely scrutinized. He probably would have lost his job. They would have said, you could have turned away from the iceberg. Why didn't you do that? You know, because they wouldn't have the knowledge that we have today. You know, we probably wouldn't even know about the Titanic if it had hit on head on and carried on the rest of its life. But there's that man out there in history that, you know, someone could say one day, oh, this man called Murdoch lost his job on the Titanic, so he hit head on with an iceberg, and you go, well, he's a fucking idiot. Why didn't he turn? Next conversation, you know?
Yes.
And it's just
like, was he on like a suicide mission? Because the whole reason that Murdoch and, you know, the crew tried to turn was to avoid the iceberg, because they thought turning would avoid it. Like, if they thought for a second they didn't have enough time, maybe if the call had come in 15 seconds later, because they only had 30 seconds between the call and the collision. So maybe if they had seen how close it was, there would have been no time to call. Or by the time the call went down, they'd have actually started turning
And
like mid collision.
Can you also imagine how different the depictions in movies would be as well? Say it did hit the iceberg head on and sank. How different the depictions would be. I reckon there'd be depictions showing Murdoch as not caring. There would have been depiction of maybe he wasn't on duty and like he came on later and was like, oh, oops, it's a bit late now.
Yeah.
You know, so many different depictions. And would he have been the villain of Titanic? Would he have been the hero? But then maybe there would have been research done as well saying, well, actually, if you look at the time that he'd seen it and the time that the iceberg hit the Titanic, if they had tried to turn and sort of mapped out what happened in our reality, you know, there's so many, it opens up a whole nother Marvel Cinematic Universe of questions and scenarios and situations of what could have happened. What if?
Yeah.
Marvel.
And it's horrific to think like the crew that would have been sleeping in the bow would have just been completely like pulverized. Like, you know, God bless, it would have been pretty quick. But yeah, just like it's fascinating to think. But I can't, it's annoying me because I'm trying to think. There was the top liked comment on the video was someone that was like thanking Michael Brady, that's his name, for making the video and blah blah blah. But then he was like, respectfully, you didn't take into consideration ... And I was like, oh, so I read the rest and I was like, good point. But I can't remember what it was, but it was something that was quite compelling. And I was like, oh, maybe he didn't take that into account. But again, this comment wasn't saying you're wrong. It would have sank in 10 minutes. You know, he was basically saying it was more nuanced than you're maybe painting.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying to find that.
I think that's also, I think when we started this video, I think it was when we started recording anyway, I don't know. But we said that the whole thing with the unanswered questions is that's what kind of keeps interest going forever. But then even with things that we think are settled and done, there's branches, or as you said, like universes, like multiple universes that kind of branch off of it. So, you know, you can say, yeah, that seems like that would be the case. And you can present all these facts and research and like animations, and you're still going to have people come and be like, but this slight variation in your tale would have caused this completely different outcome. And it's like, you're right. Like this very, very, very small variation would have caused a different outcome.
I feel like you get that with survivor testimonies as well, that, you know, people who are actually there, they say, oh, I was here at this point. And someone says, I was here at this point. And you're like, well, hold on, they couldn't have been in the same place at the same time. So they would have seen each other. And they're like, oh, no, I never saw that person. And it's like, this is, I think when people have asked me in the past, I think what this episode has done so far is it's helped me answer a question that people ask me, why Titanic? It's because there are unanswerable questions. You know, if it was so cut and dry, you know, the whole thing was filmed in 4K HD, I probably would have watched it once and gone, cool, that was interesting. We've got all the answers, know exactly what happened. Wouldn't have been as interesting. But because there are so many unanswered questions and unanswerable questions, you know, I think that's what keeps it so fresh and new. You know, I'm sat there reading in the Sea of Glass next to Megan, and she's like, why are you reading another book about the Titanic? Because there's more information. There's new things. I didn't know about this.
Because it's Titanic Bible. That's
why. I didn't know that there are third-class passengers standing next to the entrance of the second-class stairway and just standing there while people were going upstairs, just watching it going, well, we can't go there because that's second class. You know?
Wild.
I went with the James Cameron notion, you know, and if I were to watch the film with Megan, which she won't because I will talk through it and be like, did you know? Did you know? And she would hate that, but I would love it. You know, in Megan's mind of the Titanic, James Cameron's film, that's what happened.
Yeah.
With a lot of people, James Cameron films, that's what happened. The ship split like that so dramatically. She's even asked me before, she said, why are you reading up about that? If, I mean, the film shows it, why are people saying this? Well, because that's not what actually happened. It's like, but why have they done it in the film? Because they didn't know then. They thought they knew, but they didn't know. They thought they knew, but they didn't know. But now we know that they didn't know, that we know they know.
You know?
I know.
Even before you came onto the call today, I was quickly scrolling through Facebook, and someone had posted the images from the film of the pianos. So at the very start of the film, you know, you've got the light shining on the doll's head and the pianos, and they look great. But then the one only comment was someone saying, these are from the film. They were made for the film, the set. They're not on the ship. There's no pianos existing on the ship. And so even that, if that person hadn't corrected that post, you'd have potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of people liking that photo.
I believe there were 7 pianos on the ship.
No, there were, but on the wreck.
Oh, right.
Because they were made of wood. So you think like there wouldn't just be these pianos like still.
The ivory would possibly.
The ivory would
still be there, but they'd just be white clumps on the floor amongst loads of grey and whites, and be like, what that is.
So if they like dug through all the like heaps of like mud or whatever it is, they would find like a lot actually. They'd find like clothes and keys and piano keys, like, you know.
Yeah.
But just images from the film that they look great and they tell the story, but they're images from the film. But people think because James Cameron is so good at what he does, people think that these sets are from the wreck. Unanswered questions. What other unanswered questions do you have around the sinking of Titanic?
So we've spoken about the break quite a bit. You know, was it underwater? Was it above water? What I also want to know is how many parts did it break into? You know, I think there's a few different theories. There's the clean break. There's the first break with like the tower. I think they call it the tower, you know, where the third funnel was, that falls off as well, sort of breaks. But then there's also one.
I think they kind of call that the three towers theory. So you're right. Yeah, you've got, so essentially the stern and the bow are.
I think first time bums.
What? The TV just turned on by itself. I'm in here on my own, and the control is up on there.
And apparently,
it just started playing Team Mum UK.
Apparently, ghosts aren't real, but I'm just, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, maybe
the control is here. I'm gonna turn it off at the wall.
That's pretty weird, pretty strange.
Megan just texted me. My phone linked to the living room TV. Oopsie, thought it was the bedroom one. It wasn't. Sorry. I was so scared. She said, haha, I can hear you. Pranks. I was so scared. I was like, why has Teen Mum come on?
And I thought this was the evidence we needed of ghosts, damn it. Jesus. I thought this was our silver bullet.
She said, hi, Titanic podcast. It's me.
It's me.
Oh, my phone background is the artwork of, I can't pronounce his name and I feel really bad.
I say Vasilij Ristovic.
Yeah.
It was his birthday recently.
Oh, was it?
It was, yeah. My background, a bit wanky, but it's actually a section of one of my drawings.
The Carpathia one.
And it's not even like one of my favorite ones, but it was just something about, because I don't even love the color blue.
Sorry, can we not appreciate that I knew what painting it was?
I can see why you thought it was that one, but it's actually not. It's, remember I did that set of drawings where it's just the starboard side of the bow, and I did a daytime one, a kind of sunset one, and then a pitch black nighttime one. It's just like a close up.
How did you do those? Did you manipulate those on your computer, or were they 3 separate drawings?
I literally colored them in. So I drew one drawing and it was the daytime one, and then literally just colored it in pink or purple.
Oh, so colored over the top?
Yeah.
Oh, what, with pen?
Yeah. So, because I showed
Bravo.
Paul, he was like, where are those drawings? So I showed him, and obviously it's just the black one with the white pen. It's like a paint pen to do the stars. And he was like, where's the other ones? And I was like, they're under there. They're underneath. And he was like, so it was like, you ruined a drawing. And I was like, yeah, but out of that, I got 3 drawings. I was like, what do you want from me, mister? But yeah, So, but I want a new background, but I always get really indecisive with phone backgrounds. But I want a Titanic related one.
I had me and Megan, and then I changed it, and she was like, "Where am I?" And I was like, "You're on the home screen." And now the home screen is me, Megan, and the dog at Christmas. With the Christmas tree in the background.
That is so cute. That's adorable. Mine would have to either be Halloween adjacent or Titanic adjacent, because I like Halloween and I like Titanic. So
you should get DALL-E 2 and type in Titanic in Halloween.
Oh, I tried to, but then it said something about like a waiting list, and I was like, "Fuck that!"
Yeah, I applied quite a while ago actually, and I got an email. But what I didn't realize is you only get a certain amount of credits, and I'm out of credits. I've got to wait till the 15th of September. I've got to wait a month for my credits to refresh, or I can pay something like £8 for 115 credits, and I'm like, I'm not paying. I'm sorry. Great,
it's pretty wild.
Great thing. I mean, I've managed to get some fantastic things, which I love. Yeah. I don't know how it went online because it didn't get that many likes. Not that it matters about the likes, but the surrealist of the Titanic sinking in the daytime, and you've got the boat and the person, which I've sort of made my new logo, which I quite liked. I've got some really, really good ones. I've got some tattoo ideas from it as well. I typed in pirate ship as a tattoo, and it created its own pirate ship tattoos.
That's the symmetrical one that's like mirrored. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, I really like that one as well. Cool. But yeah, then I've got some other cool ones. I did Titanic sinking in a sea of fire as a oil painting, and I got that
on a sea of fire. Wow,
which I think is incredible. That's I don't know how this AI does it.
In fact, 2 points to make about the 1996 Titanic with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Tim Curry. So in the promotion, like the cover for that, they've got like fire behind it, or like coming out the funnels for some reason.
I always thought it was like a sort of a sunrise or sunset.
It could be, but I always thought it looked like fire. But in the film, they don't show fire, so it's kind of weird.
No, they
don't. But that AI thing you just showed me reminded me of that. But then another thing, we were talking earlier. Bless your wee cotton sock. But earlier we were talking about the stern and rotating, and the 2012 miniseries. Yeah, there we go. Flames, fire.
I was thinking of this one.
Yeah.
Right, so it's almost if it's sinking in the evening rather than at nighttime.
They're very indecisive with their promotional, very indecisive. But there's in the 2012 miniseries, they do show the stern kind of rotate slightly. But one thing about the 1996 Titanic is that when the stern sinks, it rotates, but it fucking spins. It does rotate, and it's great. Because it cuts straight away. It goes to Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she's very distraught, and she's serving.
I feel like that must have been an early. Catherine Zeta-Jones film.
That was one of her first roles, if not her first main role. Yeah, and she's great in it. But yeah, the stern definitely like corkscrews, and it looks cool, but it goes quite fast, and it's almost like it's forgetting how heavy that ship was. Like it couldn't.
They didn't look at physics.
No, they didn't. They didn't care about physics. But
who cares about physics?
There's like a scene in that film, or is it a mini-series or a film? I don't know. But
it's a mini-series, but it's been released as
essentially like a film. Yeah. But there's like a whole bit
a film.
Yeah, where like Tim Curry like R words like someone, and it's like I don't think it's aged. Yeah, someone. It's not aged well, but it's still worth seeing. I wouldn't avoid it.
They show some good Carpathia scenes as well.
Yes. I think any Titanic content that's available, even it wasn't ever called it. It's just called Titanic. It came out in 1943, but it's on YouTube in its entirety called Nazi Titanic. You should also watch that because actually...
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, the sinking scenes are meh, okay. But there's one scene in particular where the woman in the lifeboat, she's wearing this like sparkly dress that she just wouldn't have been wearing at like 11 o'clock
Yeah.
or 12 at night. Like, but she looks fucking fabulous. Like, she just looks great. I watched the film just for that scene where she stands up in the lifeboat because like her lover has been pulled out of the water.
Yeah.
And she just looks great, but she's probably a Nazi. And you know, that was the world then. But
yeah. I'm currently going sifting through that film to try and see the stern corkscrew. They've currently got the bow underwater. Here we go. The stern's going under. And yeah, it's I think you might be remembering it slightly different. It does speed up towards the end. It's right here. It suddenly goes, oh.
Put it back slightly.
So you've got the bow going under. I don't know how.
I like that shot where they show the underwater. That's quite creative.
And you see the mast go down as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you see of the stern. Yeah, it's definitely rotating. And then it speeds up there.
Oh, it's maybe not the 1996 one I'm thinking of then, because I'm definitely thinking
maybe it's the 2012 miniseries. This is an unanswered question. In what film does the Titanic corkscrew?
I'm thinking of one where it's a similar angle of the stern, but it's further away, it's smaller, like it's more distant. And
this sounds like the miniseries.
And it literally does a couple of turns before it disappears, and it's like, okay,
this definitely sounds like the miniseries. So let's so the ship's just split in half.
Oh, maybe it is.
I think it's.
Forgive me, Tim Curry and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
The miniseries. It then zooms.
Maybe it is.
Come on, the money shot. I mean, the sun's been sinking for a while now.
Yeah, because see the thing with Titanic sinking, there's so many variations. Because there's even, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. There's the documentary that showed they did their own CGI.
Oh, here we go. You know what? Even that's not corkscrewing, but
no. That one had quite a heavy starboard list going on there. Interesting.
But here we have it. Then again in the distance.
Definitely not that one, but I quite like the shots that they did of that.
They did show some really good shots. However, the stern was sinking for a considerable amount of time.
I'll look into it. I'm possibly thinking of a documentary because there was one documentary that did their own kind of like CGI cutaways of the sinking. But you'll definitely know what I'm talking about. One of their cutaways, the bridge is like barely underwater, but the first two funnels have fallen off. So
that happens in the 2012 miniseries. When the ship splits, just before the ship splits, the camera pans to the front, the two bridge wings are out, it goes over, two of the funnels are missing, and then it breaks in half. Even though moments before we just saw the bow, the bridge go under.
Because there's one where there's like a far off shot, and it's on one of these Instagram pages that just posts like images of Titanic. But it looks cool because it's just like an alternate reality version of the sinking of Titanic. But it's like, why on earth would the two funnels have fallen if the ship is still pretty much level? Like, there'd be something seriously wrong if the ship was just sailing and two of the funnels fell off. I want to find it now.
It's not one of those Anderson Brugger films, is it? No, because he does them really well.
He does them well. Although, do you know one thing I've always thought about his? I don't know if it's the angles or something. I've always thought the funnels looked really skinny. Like whenever he posts, mainly the thumbnails. Whenever I see the thumbnails, I'm like, the funnels look really tall and skinny. But then I watch it and I'm like, no, they look proportionate. They look fine.
Yeah.
But the thumbnails, they always look really exaggerated.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I'm on. No, actually, it's not on this one. But yeah, there's I've seen the stern sink, and it just goes and does like a complete corkscrew, and it looks wild. It looks kind of fun, actually. It's like, okay.
Like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, Titanic roller coaster. That must be a thing, surely.
Yeah.
The White Star Line 1912 page on Instagram has some pretty cool photos, but I don't know how they get away with them. I mean, they've got Patreon, but
the photoshopping the images and then selling them.
I don't think they've got any patrons, to be fair, but I don't see how you could, because it's like illegal.
Yeah. What I really like is the Titanic Archives page, which is from the 97 film, and it's showing all these unused clips and stuff that I'd never seen before, like even looking at the deleted scenes that you've got there, and I'm like, wow. Like they showed one recently of a lady going towards the lifeboat as Lytol is preparing it, and she looks over the edge and it sort of pans up and then away to the scene where Lytol is saying, for the time being, I require only women and children. But there's this like 5 seconds beforehand that's panning up of this woman looking over at this lifeboat, and the lifeboat's like creaking, which wasn't used, which is really good.
Is that on Instagram?
Yeah.
Titanic Archives 97?
Yeah. I think it's their latest upload.
Oh, yeah. And they've only got like 350 followers.
It's crazy. They have got some really good content.
I've seen, because she says something like, really, I'd rather not, or something.
It's this one here.
Yeah, because there's a deleted scene. I always thought it was, wait, is it not her? Maybe they... I know there's a deleted scene where a woman walks up and says, really, I'd rather not. But I don't know if that's from this or Ghosts of the Abyss, because obviously Ghosts of the Abyss has very similar scenes because it's from the same man, but he's added some dialogue that obviously wasn't in the film. And I just think it's hilarious, like the ship sinking. No, they don't know that, they're not aware. And they're looking at this little tiny wooden boat in comparison, and this American woman in like her fur coat is just like, really, I'd rather not. Like, and it's like,
well, fair. I'm at the part of Sea of Glass at the moment where they're talking about one of this person's testimony where they watched Lifeboat 7 get launched. They went to go in, then they stepped back, watched Lifeboat 7 launch, and then decided after seeing that, going, okay, yeah, it's safe, we'll go into Lifeboat number 5. But they wanted to see the lifeboat lower first before putting themselves into that tiny boat.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
And also the John Jacob Astor and Madeline went to get into a boat together earlier, but then stepped back. Lifeboat 7, I think it was, went to get in, both stepped back together and stood back because someone was talking to Astor, where that probably would have been his chance to get off, but didn't. Anyway,
Lifeboat 4 she went on.
I think it was, yeah. So I think they crossed over to the other side, where Lytol was refusing men.
That was getting loaded through the A deck.
Yeah.
Because I had someone reach out to me and she wanted a drawing of that scene because she had descendants that were on that lifeboat.
Oh, okay.
And she's not on Instagram, she's just a woman on Facebook, but she obviously follows some of the Titanic pages because she found out just through chance that she had 2 relatives that, they happened to be on this lifeboat with this woman who was married to the most rich man on Titanic, like the most random connection ever. Like, it's wild. And I didn't realize that Madeline would have actually been loaded onto a lifeboat through a promenade window.
Yeah. But did they load it from the promenade window in the end, or did they bring the lifeboat back up? I can't remember.
They might have done both. I always thought some lifeboats, they got people in on the boat deck, and then they got more people in on the
A deck promenade.
Yeah,
which they show in. They show it too much in the 2012 miniseries, which is interesting. But they show it almost as if every lifeboat got lowered that way.
As if that was like the protocol, and it's like
and then Murdoch shooting his gun into the ceiling. Probably hitting a few people on the boat deck as he's shooting up through the roof. I feel like we should backtrack because we got distracted by my TV turning on. So my other unanswered question was the splitting of the ship. Did it split into 2 pieces? Did you have the 3 towers? Or I saw more recently 4 towers that it split at the front, and then this section that was 3 towers actually split in 2, and then the stern. That's something that I'd like to.
Because one of the towers is it's just lying there, isn't it? There's like one section of the ship that's literally just, it's like on the ocean floor. It's like a whole, almost from top to bottom, is just fully there.
I think it's this section here, 3rd funnel.
Yeah, it's just like
that's yeah.
I just think it's really interesting, like this, and the video essay I did about, was the breakup covered up? It's much more complex than that. But the reason I titled the video that is because it's salacious and people will click on it, obviously. Yeah. But the conclusion I come to is not that it was covered up. It's that, bless you. It's that it was almost like incomprehensible that a ship could break, because a ship as large as Titanic had never sank.
Yeah.
And actually, from what I can gather, like just from thinking about it, I don't actually know of any other ships that have sank and have broken. I'm sure there have been, obviously.
Fitz.
Yeah, because that one touched the bottom.
That one V broke
as it was sinking, and the weight of it, the impact of touching the bottom of the ocean floor as it sank. Because I was aware of that, but I'd never actually watched anything about how it sank. And then I watched it and I was like, Jesus, because it was so, well, again, they don't know for certain, but it seems like it was very quick because they didn't put out any distress call.
Yeah.
There had been a call to say something about weather, or they needed something, and then it went silent. Like there was like radio silence. Whatever had happened had been very quick.
Yeah. Well, from my understanding is that the weather was so bad that it split the ship. And it split the ship, and the ship just went like that. It just
it's
collapsed inwards, and that was it. It was just like it was too late for anyone to send anything.
Terrifying. In fact, there's a video online of one of these container ships, like cargo ships, splitting like as it's sailing, but it splits and the 2 parts start drifting like independently of each other. So, it just shows you that ships do break. It's a thing that happens. But when Titanic sank, there had never been a ship as big as that. So not only has the ship sank, but it is broken, but there's contention about it. And, did that happen? Was that possible?
Yeah.
And the conclusion that I kind of came to, and that I think a lot of people at that time came to, and looking back, is that it probably did break, but it would do more harm than good to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Not even to admit, but to just say, so imagine I'm the White Star Line, and I'm like, Titanic sank, we can't hide it, it sank, soz. But then to say, it also broke, that would just make people terrified to get on a ship, because they'd actually think that the structural integrity of the ship was flawed.
Yeah. But not even that, I'm not sure if it was a cover-up, because they didn't say anything about the funnels. It was perfect. It was, out there that the funnels had collapsed. And so not only did this ship that was supposed to be unsinkable sink, it sank. The funnels fell apart. The ship broke in half. It was a nightmare. It just, the whole integrity of the ship just went.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's horrific. It was just a combination of unbelievable, like not believing what you're being told. Lightoller, when he was giving his testimony, and he said, it sank perfectly intact. And Lord Smith or Mersey, was one of them, said, I did have a trouble understanding in how a ship could achieve the absolute perpendicular. So he's saying, I was struggling to understand how a ship could become vertical. That's weird. Or, I was struggling to understand how a ship could break or what. So again, there's these people in power who, and again, something I learned in researching for the last video, the people who became lords and could preside over wreck commissions had to have worked their way up the ranks of working on a ship. But again, there had never been a ship as big as Titanic.
Yeah.
So these people would have worked their way up on ships like Oceanic. So, like a two-funnel, pretty big ship, or even like Mauritania or well, not even, because they came out pretty much like the same time as Olympic. So actually, these people who were lords and had been lords for decent amounts of time had actually never even worked on like the Mauritania or the Lusitania. Or the Olympic. So they've got their own biases and prejudice against the people that are saying Titanic broke apart. And it's understandable. And like I said in the last podcast, it's like the kind of slightly older people during the kind of Facebook, inquiry. To Mark Zuckerberg about algorithms.
So if I go on here, do I get adverts? What do you mean? Will I see adverts? Yeah. So you are giving people adverts? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because that's part of the job. Like, what do you want me to say? So, yeah, it's like, even that, I feel like interestingly, we're seeing like unanswered questions. I feel like for a long time, there might be people, like even survivors, that thought, we'll never know if the ship broke, one way or the other. We'll just never have the answer. But obviously the ship was found. But there are so many shipwrecks that aren't discovered. And I need to find the video because I need to send you it. Don't even know who made it, but someone had made this like digital animation of not even like the most famous, because I hadn't heard of most of them, but it was like a lot of shipwrecks and their depth, like under the ocean. So obviously some aren't deep at all.
Yeah.
But it was showing it in like a side profile. So between some
it shows it and then it sort of comes out a bit and then out and then it's deeper
like,
and deeper and deeper and deeper. I think
it was like a little side profile. And so between some of them, there was like 10 seconds of nothing as this little camera is like going down this like imaginary mountain.
I think
it was just because you think Titanic's deep, but then there's like ships that are like even deeper than Titanic, and it's like, the fact that Titanic
I think the Bismarck. I think the Bismarck might be.
I think the Bismarck is more.
The Titanic at like 2,000 meters, and the Bismarck's at like 5,000 meters. I'm not, again, like the aftermath and the wreck isn't something that I'm well versed in.
I think it's like that, but even
like 2,000 and then 5,000 meters is the Bismarck, and it's like, wow.
They found Titanic almost by accident. It was like their last day of searching, and it was on like the outside of the area that they had said, again, to their investors. They were like, we'll look at this area because we think this will be where it is.
Well, their investors with the US Navy, weren't they?
Was that?
Because they were looking for the submarines with nuclear weaponry. And use Titanic as a cover story. So I think their investors were the US Navy, just saying, look, we'll let you look for your little boat if you find these nuclear weapons in a submarine, please.
Yeah, and they actually found Titanic, but it was like it was like on the outskirts of their little kind of area that they'd promised to look in. Yeah. So if it was just a bit further out, it's like Titanic, it might have been found, because there's always been enough interest in Titanic. But then again, interestingly, can you imagine if Titanic had never been discovered? Because again, it was the discovery that inspired James Cameron. He saw a news report and he saw the ship and he knew what it was. He said even before I think he said that the TV was like muted or he wasn't listening, but he just knew when he saw the bow and the railings, he was like, he knew. He was like, oh, that must be the Titanic. Why else would it be on the news? Yeah. And he said it was that inspired him to write a film about it, about the technology, and then the love story kind of was like an afterthought, and that's what kind of got the money in. But if the wreck had never been found, ever, to this day, had never been found, there would be no Titanic film, because
there'd be no 97 Titanic film.
There'd be no 97 Titanic film because he wouldn't, I don't think, have had that kind of modern slant on it. Because I think modern slant very much, because Bill Paxton's character is James Cameron.
Right.
The way that, even the way they dress is the same. You know, James Cameron around that time was wearing faded denim jeans and denim shirts, and Bill Paxton's character Brock Lovett is wearing denim shirts and denim jeans. Like he is James. He is basically, you know, if I was to write a film and have like a character on the Titanic, I'd very much write myself into that story.
Gay man with a mustache.
Yeah. But it's just interesting to think, if the ship had never been found, where would we be at nowadays?
Yes. And I'd be your little manservant. I
wrote a fan fiction once, and I invented...
Not about me.
I can... No. Well,
okay. Well,
I've not published that one. That one's in like a private collection.
Married.
That one's just for me to read.
Okay.
But the other one I wrote...
Send it to me after.
On a website. I will. And I had this like steward deliver like towels or something to like Thomas Andrews' cabin, and when he sees it's Andrews, he gets like flustered because he didn't realize that was his cabin, and they have a little discussion, and then he goes away. And then later in my story, the upside down collapse wall, Andrews runs over and tries to help lift it, and he looks up, and one of the people helping him is that steward, but in their previous discussion, he discovered the steward's only 15 or 16 or something.
Oh my God, are you the steward?
I was the steward. In my head, I was writing, that was a little, I inserted myself into that story.
Little cameo.
A little cameo.
But you didn't insert yourself into Andrews.
No, but he inserted himself into Rose.
Okay, cool. Wow.
She got pregnant at the end of the story. And do you know what's really interesting? Because I said that, so my story ends, the last chapter is Rose goes to the Rec Commission and she says what she saw about the sinking and blah, blah, blah. But in my story, I wrote that she knew she was pregnant because she'd got a pregnancy test or like a urine sample or something. So not a standard one like that you could buy from a shop.
I was going to say 1912 Rose goes to the offer license. Yeah, can I have a early testing set, please? Yep, thank you. Little cardboard box, pee on a stick, done.
Yeah, but so I was like, you know, she went to a doctor with like pains or whatever, and they did like a urine sample. But then it was one of my readers who had been reading it from the beginning, and she messaged me privately, and she was like, well done, your story's finished. She was like, I'm so proud of you, you did so well. But she was like, just to let you know, she was like, that technology wasn't available in 1912. She was like, that wasn't actually available till like the 60s. So people who weren't showing visibly that they were pregnant didn't know until they were like having contractions.
Yeah.
Which I, you know, as a 16-year-old,
well, I had
like,
a bump.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I just thought I'd put on some weight. You know, I thought I was like fat. And then you give birth and you're like, oh wow, okay. But part of what I loved about her review was I described the outfit, and it was essentially the same as her boarding outfit, but black. So, you know, pinstriped skirt, blazer, big black hat, because she's mourning the death of her lover, you know, Thomas Andrews.
Not Jack.
I also didn't know that he had a wife and child who was like 2 months old. So if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have written the story because I'd be like, that's weird. But everyone loved it. You know, they ate it up like cake. Yeah.
There's gonna be someone watching this going, "Oh my God, he wrote that."
I know.
That was him.
Someone, I'll send you the screenshot. Someone went onto I did like a time lapse drawing, like one of my drawings, and I just like sped it up. And one of the comments on that is, "Are you the guy that wrote The Irishman's Young Rose?" And I was like, yeah. And they were like, "Oh, I love that." And I was like, "Thanks." It's like, you're Scottish, you're obsessed with Titanic, and you're about the right age. It must be you.
Yeah.
But interesting. But my unanswered question, one of them will always be kind of regarding not just Andrews, but Andrews and Captain Smith. You know, where were they in their final kind of moments?
Their demise. Yeah.
I think the consensus for most people is that Smith was around the bridge. There will always be people that think that he jumped into the water, saved a baby, and swam over
into collapsible B.
Yeah, and it's like, no, that didn't
and
happen.
then said, God bless you. I'm going back to my ship.
Bye. It's like, no, that just didn't happen. People would remember if that happened. But with Andrews, the steward that said that he saw him in the smoking room, he left in lifeboat 12, and that left quite like 40, 50 minutes before the ship sank. So that's a lot. Do we really think Thomas Andrews was standing staring at a painting for 50 minutes?
No. I mean, we know that he was proactive during the sinking through testimony. We know that he helped lower lifeboats, load passengers. We know that there's accounts of him throwing deck chairs in the water as well. There's the testimony in A Sea of Glass, which I'm conflicted about because I've heard that apparently it's not from a full quote about showing Andrews and Smith jumping over the railing. Apparently, someone said it to me, so I can't confirm it, but apparently the quote was more they were standing by the bridge as the ship went down during the final plunge, but this person had turned around. Right. I didn't see whether they had jumped in or not. Mm-hmm. But then obviously, there's more research in A Sea of Glass that suggests that they both jumped in over the edge together. Then there's also people saying that they saw Smith shoot himself, but then there's people saying that they didn't see that, or they saw someone else shoot themselves. Was it Murdoch? Was it another officer who...
Were either of Smith or Andrews' bodies found? I don't think were they?
No. They were never recovered.
Because I was going to say, because I'm positive I've read somewhere, and they could be right, who knows, that the reason their bodies weren't found was because if they jumped at that time, they might have been two of the people that were pulled into the hole where the first funnel was. And it's true that,
possibly.
That could
they could have been hit by the funnel.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There was, I think for a long time, people believed that John Jacob Astor was hit by a funnel, didn't they? And they said that his body was found with soot on it. But then is it the McKay Bennett?
Crushed with like money in the pockets.
Yeah. And a jacket that said J. Astor or something. But then according to, is it the McKay Bennett? Pulled his body out of the water and said it was in perfect condition. So, there's
the fact that people will even fabricate the condition of a body when it was found. So there might have been a body that was covered in soot and crushed. I mean, absolutely. Sinkings are not tidy things, especially when we know the ship has broke. Like, that's just, But so, they've maybe taken, it could have been even on the same day, so the Mackie Bennett has recovered 4 bodies and one of them happens to be J.J. Astor. But there's accounts of another body that day that's crushed and covered in soot and that had money in the breast pocket. And so reporters are like, oh, was that Astor? And they're like, we don't want to comment on that. We will not comment. So the trades will do what they normally do, is they'll kind of assume and they'll say, reports have it that J.J. Astor was crushed and covered in soot. And it's like, for all we know, that was some poor stoker. Like, we don't know.
I think it not only is it an unanswered question, it's one of those unanswerable questions, that we'll never know the answer to what actually happened in their final moments, unless someone made a time machine and went back. We're never going to know, was he stood in the bridge? Was he in the smoking room? Did he jump over the side? Did one of them shoot themselves? Did they run to the stern? Who knows? No one knows.
I was talking to Nathan recently about him, because in the James Cameron film, we see him very famously go into the grand staircase, and he just kind of like seems very unaffected. He's like holding on to a pillar, the dome breaks, and he's just like,
I think that's supposed to show shock, isn't it?
Yeah. It gives me, that meme where it's like the little dog drinking coffee and his house is on fire and he's just like, this is fine.
This is fun. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Stood there going, fuck.
This is fine. Yeah, it gives me vibes of that because I think most of us know that there wouldn't have been a lot of people in the grand staircase at that time.
Yeah.
It's a great visual. I wouldn't change a second of it. Even
No.
the fact that the top of the grand staircase has barely flooded, and yet there's water coming in the dome.
Yeah. There's
It
water
makes
coming in through the
sense.
side windows, which is probably up to the windows there. It's probably about there at the window just coming in, and then suddenly the dome breaks and water cascades down. It's like, how physics is the ship like that now? And I don't know.
People don't realize like those windows are on the boat deck, but the dome is above the boat deck. So it's like there's a lot going on there, but it looks fantastic.
It looks incredible.
It looks great.
Yeah, it does the effect. There's other people that are, not many people talk about. Yeah, well, they talk about them, but they don't speak about their final moments. Guggenheim, was he sat in that chair with his servant? I want to say Alessandro, but I don't think that was his name at all. I think I've just plucked that out of thin air.
I like it.
There we go. I think that's an amazing image of them both sat there in shock as water's coming into the grand staircase. Mm-hmm. Isidore and Ida Strauss, it's a fantastic visual in the 97 film of them laying in bed and water's going under their bed. Were they just laying in bed when the ship sank? Did they go back to their room and go, oh, we'll just lay here?
There's been a post going around, and actually my partner saw it. It was so viral that it popped up on his newsfeed.
Okay.
So he shouted me downstairs. I was like, what? And he was like, is this true? And he showed me, and it was a shot of them from the 97 film, and the text on it is, something, whatever. But then the top comment on the post was someone saying, does anyone know if they tried to leave their bedroom once it started to flood? And I was like, Paul, there's so much to unpack here. I was like, even before I read that comment, just the post on its own, there's so much to unpack. Like, they might have gone to their room. We don't know. People saw them sitting on deck chairs. People saw them walking arm in arm on the boat deck. But no one, because I was like, for someone to know that one, they were in their cabin, and two, that they left their cabin, you'd have to go down into a sinking ship.
Yeah.
Open their door and go, hello, and pop your head in. Like, can you imagine? They're lying on their bed. They want to die in peace. And then, you, Louie, you just open the door and you're like, hello. And they're just
I just want to see how this happens. Walter, you're just staying in bed. The film's flooded. The room's flooded. You're just laying in bed still. Cool. All right, I'm gonna go.
And then you're like, are you going to leave? And they're like, no. And you're like, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
They do show these sorts of poetic deaths with the Strauss's death and the Guggenheim death. But in reality, say they were in those situations that they're shown in the film, Guggenheim's not going to be sat there, water flooding into the staircase, water's going up, and he's just sat in the chair going, this is fun, like in shock. Like, there must have been a moment, say that was what happened, there must have been a moment where Walter got to his feet, the chair started to move, and he got up and, I doubt he would have just stood there in the room saluting as the water comes up him. Like, would he have been running away? Would he have been holding onto the room, swimming around? With the Strausses, the water cups over to their bed, they're suddenly in freezing cold water hugging each other. They're going to be like, oh, fuck, that's cold. Are they then stuck in that room as it goes down? And
I mean, to not be too morbid, but it's pretty morbid, there's a reason that methods of, ending your life are not suffocation or drowning, because your body, whether you want it to or not, resists that.
Yeah.
So if you get a pillow and hold it to your face to try and not breathe, your arms will just lift.
Yeah. But it's the same as if you're drowning, if you're underwater long enough, your body, even if you're telling it not to, will try and take in air. And that's how a lot of people die when they're drowning. They try and take that gasp of air, but obviously they're underwater, so they're just going, they're just sucking in the seawater and they just drown themselves. It's just, it's one of those things. It's like your body's got that fight or flight reaction at the last moment. It's always going to take that flight and that fight and just try and go, oh, fuck.
So it's not going to be stoic, but I guess if Guggenheim was just sitting chilling, when it flooded, I think instinctively when something's cold, if you think even on like a sunny summer's day and it's quite warm and you go to the beach and you start walking into the water, and even when it's just around your ankles, you're like, oh to quote Jack,
oh shit, this is cold.
and it is cold,
Yeah.
And then you get to your knees, and then for guys, the next step is getting it to your balls.
The balls.
But once you pass the balls, then it's like your nipples. But once you pass there, you can kind of like count to 3, dunk your head, and you're fine.
Yeah.
Like that's you've made it. But if that's not within your control, you're not controlling the depth. The water's controlling the depth. That's a totally different thing. And I just think psychologically, you're not walking into the water's actually walking up to you.
Yeah.
And I actually think your brain's going to want to get away from that. And I think that's why most people weren't sitting in the grand staircase like the film shows. I think that's why most people were on the stern, because even if you're not getting on a boat, even if you're not near the front of the ship, you just want to be as far from the water as possible. I think personally the grand staircase was probably empty, and I think most people probably assume that.
Because also in that you see people coming up through the sides, the corridors that lead to the bow from there. Like, where have they been? Have they just been chilling in that part and they've gone, oh fuck, let's run up here? Like playing like a Roblox game, like Roblox Titanic. People always run towards the water, stand there for ages, and then run back. They weren't doing that in real life. These people are coming up from all different areas in the grand staircase, like from corridors, from the bottom of the stairs, suddenly they're swimming in the water. Like, you would have had a long time before you knew the staircase was going to be in the water before you started going, I'm just going to swim in here.
Yeah, it's like, where have you been all night? And like, you've got like suitcases. Like, stewards were told to go and knock on doors, and if there was no response, lock them. Which is kind of horrific, because it means if there was someone like deeply asleep, they were locked.
It was in a Titanic documentary. That was the lady who was locked in her room, unless this was entirely fabricated. But she was in her room, and then water started to come up through the sink in her room. Then someone had to break the door down.
Yeah. Because the stewards, I mean, I suppose it would take slightly longer. And my anxiety, if I was a steward, I would probably, but it does take longer, to open the door, look in. But then also, if you don't know if the ship's sinking or not. You probably know it's not a drill. You're probably smart enough to know this isn't a practice run. We're taking on water. But for all you know, the ship will be there in like a day's time.
Yeah.
And
it's a precaution. It is a precaution.
Yeah, you're getting paid like 50p a day, and you open the door and poke your head in, and there's like these first class people having like an orgy, and you're like, oh, and you're like, shut the door. It's like, you wouldn't want to. So at the most, you're knocking on the door, you're saying, get your lifebelt on, or you're just knocking on it. And if there's no response, you're locking it, because you're ensuring that there's no theft going on. And like Bill said when he was on the show, he said that all these doors have been locked. So when they were going into the rooms through the windows or any opening they could get in, everything that was in the room is still in the room, because there was no way for it to leave the room. And I just think that the whole grand staircase thing, where there's people like running, it's like, where have you been? Where have you been hiding? Like, what's going on there?
There's that guy who's holding on to the cherub and screaming. It's like, how have you got to a situation where you're down the stairs that's probably had water in for a while, and you've let yourself get to the point where you're now holding on to this, going, and why is he still holding on to it? Why hasn't he just gone, oh, let me go from here to the stairs that I'm on and go up them?
Watch it again. I always thought he looked, I'm sure it's not, but I always thought he looked like Adam Sandler. He's got a look of Adam Sandler.
Okay. From memory, I can see that.
he's got longer hair, but I'm like, you look like Adam Sandler. That's weird. Yeah, it's funny. It's weird. Oh, I'd like to find out who the actor is and just look at him now.
Yeah.
Like, do you look like Adam Sandler? But,
you know what I love about the 97 film, going slightly off topic from unanswered questions, is that you can rewatch it so many times and see so many different background characters and go, oh shit, that's based off of that person there. Like, it took me ages to realize that you can actually see Colonel Astor. Not Astor.
Gracie.
You can see him with the white glove trying to cut the falls on Collapsible B. You can actually see him there with lights on and moving around. It's like, oh shit, so he is there. And like, you've got all these different characters. And I've always tried to Google hidden background characters, Titanic 97. It just shows you loads of random things. But that's because the amount of times you watch it, and like, I'm in groups on Discord where people like circle people from screenshots and like, this is actually based off of this person who was at this part as the ship was sinking. You're like, shit. So like,
and even the bit where Jack and Rose run up to Gracie and she says, Colonel, are there any boats on that side? And he says, no, miss, but there's a couple of boats all the way forward. This way, I'll lead you.
He's got the 3 ladies.
Yeah, and they were women who, it was kind of a thing. So when a man of a certain class, maybe they did it in the second class as well, potentially even third class, you know, you're single and you come on and you see that there's a woman or a couple of women who are traveling alone, and you make it your mission or your duty to just make sure that they're okay, they've got what they need, and they get off safe, and you know. But definitely in first class, that was expected of you. You had to do that. So he came on, and I forget their names, but he befriended these women.
I've just read parts of that bit in Sea of Glass where it names the people.
Yeah.
I had a whole list on my phone of people's names that I'd not seen before. And now it just looks like a really weird list because of how many names I've added. And I'm like, yeah, I don't remember any of these people from earlier. I'm trying to remember who that person was and what they're connected to, but it's just a name now. I don't know who that is.
Because in the film, if you've got no knowledge, you just see Rose run up to this old man with white gloves and 3 terrified women. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, how does she know him? Why does he seem so cooperative? And again, there's no reason for it. How would?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Rose, being of high society, she would know who he is, and he might know who she is.
Well, he was there earlier in the arrest scene, wasn't he? When they tried to arrest Jack, and she was like, "No, I was looking over." He's like, "Women and machinery should not mix."
Yeah, shit. So he was. Yeah.
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 But obviously, I don't think they named him.
No. But one of those women refused to get on a lifeboat and she died. So the 3 women, 2 survived and one passed away. Which
it makes
really
you think, all these, that you look at it in the film and go, oh, they're a load of random extras. Did Cameron go up to them and say, right, you're playing this passenger, this was their name?
Well,
you're playing this passenger, this is your name, this is your name, this is your name? Or was he just like your extra 1, 2, 3, 4?
I'm pretty sure this is in the behind the scenes thing. It's on YouTube, because I've never had a DVD that had like a huge extensive bonus.
You didn't have the 4-disc CD?
I was going to get it, but I was like 13 or something, and it was in a blue velvet case. It was huge, and when you opened it, it had a like replica of like the Heart of the Ocean, and it had like multiple discs.
Yeah, I've got that.
But I
not that one.
Hadn't come out yet. So I was like, if I buy this and come home, my dad's going to know I'm gay. And I was like, I can't. I was like, I can't do it. So, but I wish I had now, because it was in HMV. It was there and it was fucking beautiful and I loved it. But I was like, can't do it. But I remember watching something on YouTube, and it was narrated, I'm sure, by John Lando. And he's saying that every extra, every actor had a name, or had been given, even if it wasn't a name, had been given, you're this class, you need to behave this way, or so I'm sure the 3 women, because if Cameron has done enough research to know that Gracie had taken charge of these women, he's definitely gone to them and said, this is who you're actually playing. So like, for instance, you know, the women who refuses to get on a lifeboat and she actually dies, if Cameron says to that actress, so you're playing this woman who she actually was so scared that she didn't want to get on a lifeboat and she passed away. She might be playing it more casually, she might be acting more chilled, or she might be playing more frantic, like so scared that she can't move, like she can't bring herself to go on a lifeboat. But yeah, and like even actresses that weren't in front of the camera that day were still given corsets, like their undergarments were still appropriate. Like that level of detail, it just doesn't happen anymore. And maybe it doesn't need to ever happen. If you're never actually going to be on camera, or if people aren't going to look at you and go, you're not wearing a corset. But I personally, I love that. I think it's great. I really appreciate that level of detail.
It's like next level method.
Yeah.
But coming from the director.
Yeah. Which I think most actors would really enjoy.
Oh yeah.
You're not
if I were to ever star in a Titanic series or something, I'd like to know who I was embodying. I wouldn't want to have the director say, right, so you're extra 4, you're going to flail about and jump in the water and swim off. I'd want to know, okay, what's my name? What's my journey been up to this point? Yeah. Why has my character decided to jump into the water rather than go for a lifeboat or go to the stern? Why? I'd want to know this information so I could know how to accurately portray this sort of...
Could you imagine if in like 10, 15 years, there's like, they're making a Netflix series or they're making a film of Titanic and they come to the UK and they want like to recruit people and you and I are like, let's go for it. But then they cast us both as like men on top of collapsible B and say they don't include Jack Phillips, or they just give us random or no names and say by that time we know every single man who was on top of collapsible B. And we're like, right, so who are we? Are we like, and we like reveal like a list. We're like, pick a name.
They'll probably say, listen, mate, you're an extra, just get on the boat. And we'll probably go, okay, yes, sir.
Mentally, we could be like, I'm this person. And we could,
I'd look at it, I'd go, I'm Bride.
But do you know what I found out recently? That, apparently, obviously Jack Phillips was on it and his legs were submerged in the water the whole time. That's why they were going to amputate them on Carpathia. And he was like, no, and they didn't. And
I thought that was Bride who survived. Bride survived, Phillips died.
Sorry, yeah. Because it was a Coronation Street actor that played him, wasn't it? Yeah, so it was Bride. Bride. So he was one that had like the lighter hair, the curly hair. And Phillips was one that had the dark hair. Yeah. Sorry, apologies. So, but I heard that recently they actually both got onto that boat. But Bride passed away. And I was like, Phillips passed away. And I was like, I didn't realize that. That was quite, because my interpretation was...
think they show that in A Night to Remember. Do they show that in Night to Remember? Maybe
they show them both getting on.
They definitely show one of the wireless operators there, and then one of them lowering a body into the sea, saying this one's gone, and they lower him into the sea, and then they bring the chef on, and he's like, "Like you said,
pushed as a fart."
Yeah,
I find that wild. The fact that because even that he was swimming for like 4 hours before he was picked up. How? Because if that overturned lifeboat was like drifting or whatever, and he was like paddling around for 4 hours, surely that lifeboat, were they traveling at the same rate? Like, where did they find him?
I think he was holding on to it. I'm not sure.
But then I've read things that said he was swimming and then they found him. But then also he gave like 2 or 3 different accounts of the sinking. So
I was on this part. No, I was on this part. No, I was on this bit No, I was on the sign. I was on the sign on that side. I was on this side.
It's like there were 3 signs, so you need to pick one that you were on.
Yeah.
You know, what one was it? It definitely wasn't this one. So it was one of these 2. Yeah, I mean, it's worth, because he was one of the only people that went down with it to live. So we need to listen to him. But then he was also as drunk as a skunk. So it's like, shit, like, fuck, like you hold you've got the key, you've got the secret, but you were also so intoxicated that you don't know what happened.
Did he ever say anything about the split? Because obviously he was on the ship as it split in half.
Yes, but no. So when I was doing my research for the was the breakup covered up? So his account, so he was in the pantry and he heard a buckling of metal and he ran out of the pantry. And that's when he started to head aft. And he said when he was, because I think, so basically he was getting a drink of water, he was in the pantry, getting a drink of water, and he heard metal buckling. And he was like, shit, this ship's going to break. And he ran out of the pantry, started to run up to the stern. And as he was running up to the stern, he heard someone else shouting, go gently, she's going. So he heard someone else shouting, essentially, like, which it's impossible. Like, if there's all these people running or, gathering in one part of the ship, but he heard someone shouting, like, careful, like she's delicate, essentially, or she's fragile right now. So there was clearly, between him hearing the buckling and running, having a reaction to that, and him hearing another man shouting to go carefully, she's going. There was clearly an understanding that something was happening.
Yeah.
Beyond just sinking. Which I've always found that really fascinating.
Yeah. But he never actually said, I felt the ship move downwards suddenly. Suddenly we were on a flat surface.
Well, he didn't hear it break, but he heard it. He felt it tilt, because he said there was a mass of bodies on the port side. So when he was on the poop deck, that was when it apparently rolled. And he said that there was a mass of bodies on the port side, and that's when he apparently got onto the starboard
sign.
Yeah. So he was aware of metal making noises. He was aware of a man saying that something was happening.
Yeah.
And that was when the lights were still on. But then when the lights were off, he just said he was aware of bodies going to one direction.
Right.
It's just his whole account, despite him being drunk, and even if it wasn't 100% accurate, it's like nightmare fuel. Like
that could be another picture. On the stern, people on the rail. The same. Now, Arron, do you have any other questions?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Because I'm thinking it's around the 3-hour mark now since we started.
Is it? Wow.
If you had any other questions, now would be a perfect time. As you see, the light has gone for me.
It has.
I'm in darkness.
You've been fully submerged in darkness.
My wife is sat on the bed in the bedroom thinking, can I go in the living room yet?
No, my main question was about the breakup. But no, my questions, they've not been answered, and they will remain unanswered. And if I think, because I said before, I think episode topics, they don't just need to be a one-off.
No.
I think this could be we could return to this. And
definitely. There are hundreds of unanswered questions about the Titanic, and we've had about 5 or 6.
Yeah, we've covered very few. And God only knows what Presley and David and Callum and stuff would bring up, Nathan. We have no idea. So
Sebastian.
Exactly. So yeah.
It'd be really bad if we missed someone out.
I was just going randomly.
Yes, same.
Jordan. you know. So all of us. But yeah, so I think, yeah, let's leave it there. If there's any questions or unanswered questions that people watching this have, you know, let us know.
You
Comment.
want to know. I think you want to know.
Your country needs you to know. Comment below.
What do you want from us? What can we tell you? What do you not know?
It's
what do you want us to say?
It's more intimidating because you're in like pitch black. It's quite scary.
Tell me what you want. What do you want?
Trust me, he's quite a nice person. Well, I hope he is, because I'm going to meet him finally in like September. So Jesus.
I was looking at the tickets earlier.
You could do like a really good like Jack dying scene if you like took a draw of your vape and it would look like cold air, like breath. See? You're gonna get out of here. You're gonna make lots of babies and you're gonna watch them grow.
Oh, I'm already dead, Arron.
Oh, sorry. I'll never let go, Louie. I'll never let go.
Come back! Come back! This has just gone off the rails.
It really has. You know, Joffin was drunk and he held on to the rails more than we have. So, you know, just saying that's a good demonstration of holding on to the rails there.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know in the comments below on YouTube any other questions that you have, and we might answer them in the next video, because I definitely want to do like a part 2.
Yeah.
It might even be a part 3, because Chandler, when this episode idea was first floated, he was one that definitely was like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, clearly we have people that have thoughts.
Oh,
so,
100%.
So this has almost been like a very, like, this has been like an appetizer, you know, stuff that we floated. Yeah. There's more to this, you know. This
100%, definitely.
Tip of the iceberg.
Oof, I like it. And don't forget, everyone, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
Listen to us on Spotify, all other podcasting apps. Have a look at our Patreon. We've got many different tiers on there. One of them even lets you listen in on an episode and possibly speak a little. Definitely speak a little. We wouldn't just make you sit there and not speak.
No,
no. You get a 5-word limit.
5-word limit. Yes.
Yes, so, I have a question. 5 words.
Well, I have a question. That was 4. So they'd have 1 word to use up at least.
I have a question. Yes,
please.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, I have a question.
I have a question.
So yeah, so find us on Instagram at Time To Talk Titanic. We're also on Facebook at Time To Talk Titanic. Also YouTube if you're watching us here.
Hey Arron, are we on Twitter?
I made a Twitter for my Titanic artist thing, and I hate Twitter. It's a cesspit. But you know what, Louis? If you ever want to make a Time To Talk Titanic Twitter,
oh, you know me, I don't do work.
You do you. But thank
Reddit
you
would
all
be
for
good.
watching our list. What?
I think we should have a Reddit.
I've got a Titanic artist Reddit. Reddit's got very good engagement. Reddit's and a lot of good opinions. Reddit's very
opinionated,
interactive. Yeah, it's very very vocal.
Well, guys, maybe by the time you're watching this, I have plucked up the courage to make a Reddit for us. Who knows? Probably not.
Well, I've got a Titanic artist Reddit, so you can make a Time To Talk Titanic Reddit.
I've got a personal Reddit.
In fact, I've posted links to our videos on Reddit before, and people have commented saying, I love this podcast. I just wish it was more regular. And I was really shocked because I was like, not only are they listening to it already, but they enjoy it enough to want it more.
They want more. Right, guys, if you want more, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Send us DMs on Instagram. Comment on our posts saying, we want more. We want more. And you know what? You might just get what you wished for.